As we continue to spotlight a new book each week during the shutdown, we turn to Lincoln on the Verge. The true story about what may have been the most difficult moment in this nation's history and the extraordinary trip directly in the middle of it. Author Ted Widmer details how our nation's 16th president survived those pivotal 13 days.
November 1860, Abraham Lincoln is elected in a four-way contest with just under 40% of the vote, but enough to make him the 16th president. Storm clouds gathered for months before Lincoln was finally able to set off for the White House by train with everything on the line.
When he left on this trip, he'd just been elected president. One would think he's pretty happy to be moving forward and doing this. He wasn't.
It was the worst presidential transition in our history for him and really for everyone, because it was anything but a joyful event. His election immediately led to Southern promises that they would secede, and then they start to do it.
Ted Widmer's new book, Lincoln on the Verge, details the chaos, hijinks, deadly threats, and narrow escapes during 13 days on the rails.
At the time he makes this trip, 7 states have already seceded.
Right.
More to come.
More to come, but crucially, the ones they were the most worried about did not secede while he was on the train. So Maryland might have gone, and if Maryland goes, there's no way he can get to Washington.
The winding route that began in Springfield, Illinois, zigged and zagged across 7 states before eventually arriving in D.C.
The railroad is behind a lot of Lincoln's career, and he actually loved railroads, and he was a railroad lawyer. And as I argue in the book, the train is a very important symbol for him of progress. Trains could go 60, 70 miles an hour. Lincoln is moving along pretty fast in some parts of this route. And the cars he sat in were quite plush. He'd come a long way from his log cabin. And I described these sort of elegant sofas and these settees and the paintings that were hanging in these, it's like an early Air Force One that he's moving along on.
Yeah.
And that was part of the allure. People not only wanted to see Abraham Lincoln, they wanted to see these very elegant trains, the presidential train coming through their small town. So it's not just Lincoln that is exciting to people, but the idea of the presidency itself, which had become pretty weak in the 1850s. And after Lincoln's 4 years, the presidency will always be an important office.
The biggest threat of the journey came from an alleged plot to assassinate the president-elect in Baltimore. Lincoln was never eager to talk about it, but Widmer argues in detail it was very real.
The miracle really is that it did not succeed. We all know how Lincoln's life ended in 1865, but I came away from the close study of the assassination plot in 1861 with a deep sense of gratitude that he made it at all.
Widmer says the plot to kill Lincoln before he could take office was uncovered by Dorthea Dix, who'd gained fame for her work with the mentally handicapped. She, in effect, became a spy, rooting out dangerous information. Alan Pinkerton of the famed Pinkerton Detective Agency and a team of his agents were recruited to help foil the plot.
It's pretty fascinating to hear about.
It's a bit like a Mission Impossible team. They put on Southern accents and they quickly infiltrate the plot and figure out the details. And that's how word gets to Lincoln that he's got to go through Baltimore in the middle of the night, which he does with Alan Pinkerton and one friend in an ordinary passenger seat at 4 in the morning.
But a potential assassination, while the gravest of the threats on this trip, was not the only one.
His son lost his inaugural address multiple times. Welcoming committees were firing cannons toward the trains.
Right.
The country's falling apart. Everything is going wrong, and he had to keep his cool.
Sometimes his worst enemies were his friends. Sometimes when he came into a town, all of the windows in the train would shatter because people fired the guns too close to the train, or in one case, a cannon was fired into the train. So it's pretty haphazard.
He's trying to deal with all of that at the same time.
I mean, he's a normal guy, too. He's Lincoln. He has these superhuman talents that are beginning to be discovered, but he's also just trying to get his family and his difficult kids and his difficult wife from stop to stop on a long train trip. It's a little bit like a Chevy Chase movie.
Good reference with Chevy Chase.
Yeah, that came out of nowhere.
Sounds about right, though.
He kept it together mentally, and he was always funny when he needs to be. I mean, Lincoln has a very quick wit. Always served him well as a candidate and as a president. But he's processing all of this deeply and thinking hard about a message that can bring all of these very different kinds of people. And one of the main points of the book is he's seeing rural people, he's seeing city dwellers, he's seeing a lot of immigrants. And what is the special sauce that can keep all of these very different people together? And he's saying beautiful things about what it means to be American.
Lincoln's writing and speeches got better and better as he was able to effectively harness and deliver the message he'd been painstakingly trying to get across from day one, that saving the Republic, as it stands, was the only option for Americans then and now.
I argue in the end of the book that if the U.S. doesn't stay together, the cause of democracy is fatally weakened. It wasn't doing very well around the world when Lincoln was elected. But by saving American democracy, I believe he saved the cause of democracy worldwide. And if the United States hadn't been one powerful country in the 20th century, I think we would have seen a very different final result in World War II, and we'd be living in a very different world today.
That is quite something to think about, Dana. And at last count, there were about 15,000 books on Lincoln. Not all of them are worth reading. Lincoln on the Verge is.
Well, once you get a Chevy Chase reference in there, all I can think is Fletch, foul play, and now Abraham Lincoln, too. Great job, Jeff.
All right.